Yes. We still have other questions. Let's have more of that when we reach the discussion for the systematic review. Anyway, before that, no, where did we end? Yeah, research design, and then we have the research local, and then the sampling technique. So let's discuss the different types of samples. We have probability and non-probability sample or sampling technique. So you may have to choose one from this, but you have to make sure that it is aligned with your research design. So when you say probability sampling, I believe I already discussed this one in your statistics. Again, probability sampling technique is giving chance to all the members of the population to be selected. Okay, so this is where we get random samples, and when we say random samples, this is the best representative for our population. Therefore, if we do probability sampling, the findings that we can get, or the data that we can get, are considered valid, and at the same time it can be used to make inferences about the characteristics of the population. Okay, so most likely when you're going to do quantitative research, you have to use probability sampling. Okay, but actually non-probability samples are accepted. Okay, so this is just the reverse, meaning we don't really give equal chance to all the members of the population to be selected as subjects, participants, or respondents of the study. So since they are not considered as representative, then we cannot use the data that we can collect here to make inferences about the characteristics of our population. So sabi ko kanina, review lang ito kasi I believe I already discussed this one sa statistics ninyo. Let's start first sa sampling techniques. Sa probability sampling techniques. We have here simple random sampling. This is the best known and the most common na probability sampling technique that we have, wherein again, since this is plus probability sampling, then we have here equiprobability, which means that all the members of the population will be given equal chance to be included in the study. And the data that we can collect from each participant or each respondents class are considered independent from each other, and that the data that is collected from one person may not affect, or yung pagpili actually ng pagkapili ng isang member will not affect to the chance given to another member. So how are we going to do the simple random sampling? You may do the lottery method, wherein you may write in a paper all the names of the members of the population and just draw it after. Or you can just have codes lang kasi minsan mahirap magsulat ng mga names, no? So you may just have a list and then assign numbers to them, and then yun yung ilalagay natin sa lottery natin. Or pwede din siyang tawaging fishbowl method, since we are going to place this paper inside like fishbowl and then just draw who will be the participants or the respondents of our study. So some of them are actually doing table of random numbers. Now we just like what I said a while ago, there will be a list of all the members of the population, assign numbers to them, and then this time it will not be draw lots, but ano siya, ilalagay natin yung numbers sa table, and you may actually have someone choose kung anong number yung pagpipiliin. So hindi makikita kung sino yung person behind that number. May in that thing, that is still random, okay? Random sampling pa rin yun. So they have equal chance to be selected in the study. Okay? That's again simple random sampling. So you may do that when you're going to collect answers from your respondents. Pero this will not be easy, especially if you have a lot of possible respondents. I mean, ang population nyo is like masyadong marami. Paano kung isa ka million na siya? Medyo mahirap siyang gawin for a simple random sampling. So kaya meron pang mga other techniques for the probability sampling. Now, we have systematic sampling with random start, stratified sampling, and cluster sampling. I'll just show you a video on how are we going to do this para mas maintindihan siya, ha? Para ma-picture out nyo paano siya ginagawa. Wait. Okay. For the stratified sampling, I don't have my pen now. I left it sa bahay. My bad. Anyway, when you do stratified sampling, the first thing, syempre, is for you to identify your population, and then you are going to divide them into groups, or we call that strata. Stratum kung isa lang, okay? So, you have to make sure that this group class has homogeneous characteristic. So when you say homogeneous, pare-parehas sila, ha? Example, igrupo mo sa isang grupo ang lahat ng babae na member ng population mo. And then another group sa lahat ng lalaki. So, ayun, 2 groups lang yun. Yung sa example kanina, 3 grupo yun siya. So, you have 1 group here for the girls, and then you have 1 group here for the boys. Okay? This is different from simple random, ha? Kasi sa simple random, talagang lahat sila. And then you will choose your respondents or your participants. Diretso na yun, randomly. This time, you have to divide them first into homogeneous groups, and then from there, you do the simple random sampling. Okay, so after the stratified, after grouping them, go back to the simple random sampling. So you have to choose here again randomly who will be the representative for all the girls and who will be the representative for all the boys. Well, this will be based again in your sample size. Because remember, last time we computed already, I taught you already how to determine the sample size if you have the population. Okay? Compute natin sample size, tapos i-divide natin. Okay? So, ilan yung kailangan sa girls, ilan yung kailangan sa boys. You choose them randomly. You can go back with the lottery method or the fishbowl method or the table of random numbers, meaning you will still assign numbers to all the girls or even the boys, and then from there select. Okay, you may use technology, ha, you may use software also to generate the numbers that you're going to use as representatives. Okay, do you have questions about stratified and sa simple random sampling? Kasi you may have to use this in your paper, in your study, depending ha sa need ng study ninyo. Like pangutana. What's that again? Stratified sampling, no? So let's look at the systematic sampling. Actually, nauna ko palang diniscuss yung stratified. Let's go back to the systematic sampling with random start. So how are we going to do this? This is still under the probability. That. So again, when you do systematic sampling, no, with a random start, all you need to do first is to like assign numbers sa mga participants mo. So assuming you have 10 participants, ay 15 na lang natin kasi masyadong konti. This is 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Example, this is the population size. Okay? And then you have to select syempre the sample. Kasi we don't really do population studies, no? Most of the time we do sampling only. Now, if you have 15 population, actually, ang pinakamadaling gawin for you to know what will be your interval is to just divide. I is interval. This is N is the population size, and then you divide it with the sample size. So assuming class na your sample size here should be 5. This will just be ano class ha, approximation since we don't really compute this here. Pero example lang ito. So the interval will be N is 15 divided by 5. Again, that is 3. Okay? Tapos, ang gagawin natin, meron na tayong interval. You will just have to choose where to start. Kasi nga, di ba, random start. So, pwede kang mag-start sa 3, sa 4, or sa 5. Or kung gusto mo talaga sa 1, then pwede kang mag-start dyan. Or pwede ding sa 6. Again, depende sa iyo. Kasi again, random start ito. Now, for example, I want to start here. So, 1 automatically will be included in my study. Kung sino man yan siya, I'll be interviewing her or him, or I will be giving my questionnaire sa kanya para sagutan niya. Okay? So this is 1. And then we have an interval of 3. So I'll just count 1, 2, 3. Okay, I know. Dito pala akong start. 1, 2, 3. Ayan ha, right after the 1. So, ayan na. So, ito included. 1, 2, 3. This one also is included. 1, 2, 3. Ilan na yan? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 pa lang. 1, 2, 3. So, pwedeng ganito yung gawin ninyo. Pwedeng ganito ha. Basta as long as you will have a random start and then you may choose your interval. Ang sa akin lang ito, kinumpute ko na lang yung interval para mas magiging madali sa akin na hindi na ako mahirapan mag-think ano ba talaga ang interval ko. Pwede siyang gamitin. So again, I is equal to capital letter N divided by N. Okay, small letter n. N is the population size while small letter n is the sample size. So this is still under the probability sampling. Okay, so na-mention niya lang kanina na pwedeng magkaroon ng bias. So you have to be careful also kasi baka yung napili dyan, example sa 5 yan, puro sila lalaki or puro sila babae. Kasi hindi mo naman talaga, kasi nga probability sampling ito. Pero baka lang magkaroon ng ganon. It may be considered as bias. So you have to be careful also in using this systematic sampling with random start. Systematic siya kasi you have a system when it comes to the interval. And then magra-random start ka lang. Ikaw lang mag-choose where to start. Okay? Questions or clarifications? Kasi we will have the last one, and that is the cluster sampling.
Okay, now it's time to move on to cluster sampling. Cluster sampling gets confused with stratified sampling a lot. Stratified sampling is what we looked at in the previous video. If you're watching these in order, if you're not, then you can find the other one. You can hopefully tell the difference between cluster sampling and stratified. I have my same population, and with stratified sampling, we grouped our people by color. We had all of our blue people, then our black people, then our red people, and we looked at them, and that was stratified. But with cluster sampling, we group them in a different way. It's a natural grouping, and each one of the groups is called a cluster. So let's say that all of these people lived on the same street. And I'm going around and I'm interviewing people. So these people lived on one street, this group of people lived on another street, and this group of people lived on another street. Let's say this one here was Maple Street. And this one here was Main Street. And this group here lived on First Street. And all of these streets are in the same neighborhood, but I don't want to go around the entire neighborhood because it's going to take me forever. So I want to save some time. I want to save my legs. I want to make this interview process a little bit easier on myself. So what I do is I use SRS once again. But this time, I'm going to use SRS to randomly choose one street. So I put Maple Street, and Maple Street gets the number 1, Main Street gets the number 2, and First Street gets the number 3. Hopefully that doesn't confuse you, that First Street gets the number 3. And then I use SRS, once again, to randomly choose a number between 1 and 3. And it just so happens that the number that comes up is the number 2. So I use SRS and I choose the number 2, which means Main Street is the cluster that I'm going to interview. So I would interview all of the people that live on Main Street. And hopefully I would be able to, every single person on Main Street would be willing to do the interview. But I would interview everybody on Main Street because Main Street was the cluster that got chosen using simple random sampling. So instead of numbering the people in my population, I number the clusters in my population. That's the big difference. And I interview everybody within a particular cluster.
Okay, so that is cluster sampling. Do not confuse that with the stratified sampling, ha. So in stratified sampling, you just have to group the members of the population in a homogeneous group, meaning they have the same characteristic. And then after that, you have to choose representatives from each group. Okay, from each group talaga. So merong example, kung babae at lalaki lang talaga yung groupings natin, may representative tayo sa babae, meron din tayo sa lalaki. This time for cluster sampling, ito talaga yung talagang malawak masyado yung population mo, no? Population size mo masyadong malaki. Example, residents of General Santos City, masyadong marami yun. No, pila na takabuok sa Jensan. So we can do cluster sampling. How? We can choose barangays, the domiciles here as clusters. So meron tayong barangay Labangal, barangay Kalumpang, barangay hindi ko familiar. The Jangas West and so on. Ganun. So yun yung mga clusters natin. We call them clusters. So they don't really have homogeneous na characteristics. Kasi in a barangay, may babae, may lalaki, may matanda, may bata. Pero when we are going to choose the cluster, pag na-divide na natin sila, we will still use simple random sampling. Okay? So like we assign numbers again sa mga barangays na ito, like barangay Labangal is number 1 and so on. And then we will choose. Depende din sa sample size na needed natin, ha. For example, sa population, kailangan mong at least 500. So titingnan mo din ngayon pagbunot mo na barangay Labangal yung napili mo, kung sa tingin mo you can achieve the 500 na sample size sa barangay Labangal, talagang doon ka lang. Okay? Isang cluster lang yung pipiliin mo. Okay? So pagpili, pag-generate, tapos example, 1 talaga yung na-generate, barangay Labangal, doon ka lang. Interview mo lahat ng, or bigyan mo ng questionnaire yung mga residents sa barangay Labangal, and they will be representative for the whole general Santa City. That's how you do a cluster sampling. So it's a totally different one compared to our stratified sampling. Okay? Yeah, pwedeng 2 barangays kung kasya. Okay? So check nyo muna. Like, pila ba ang population sa Jensen? I'm not really sure. And then i-check nyo with either the Slobin's formula or the raw software kung ilan ba dapat ang sample size. And then if you're going to divide it with per barangays and then i-generate nyo na yung number. Example, barangay Apopong. You check the population of the barangay Apopong kung enough na ba siya doon sa target sample size mo. Kung hindi pa, you may add another barangay. Okay? Where you can do the interview or you can do the survey. Okay? That's how you do the cluster sampling. So it's a totally different one sa stratified sampling. Okay? So that's it for the probability sampling. Do you have questions? Job satisfaction. Who are your respondents for the job satisfaction? Pharmacist. Pharmacist. Community hospital. Community pharmacist. Ilan ba community pharmacist sa Jensen? Jensen lang yan, di ba? Hindi ko kasi alam kung ilan lahat yung population ng community pharmacist sa Jensen. Pero sa mga, ano ba study ninyo? Hindi ko alala. Job satisfaction of community pharmacist in a chain drugstore. So that means yung population nyo will just be pharmacist working, like example in Mercury, in Rose, ganon? Kasi you may do stratified sampling. When I say stratified sampling, you group them according to the chain drugstore where they work. Okay, hindi siya cluster sampling ha. Ano siya, kasi homogeneous sila. Ito sila, isang grupo sila. Nasa Rose Pharmacy sila lahat. Ito isang grupo sila, Mercury. Homogeneous sila kasi isang workplace sila. And then from there, you choose who will be the representative. Pwede niyo siyang stratified sampling actually. Para hindi kayo mahirapan. And hindi siya magiging bias kasi well represented yung lahat ng chain drugstores. Okay? Kasi baka pag mag-simple random kasi kayo, baka lang puro taga Mercury lang inyuhang mahatagan sa inyuhang questionnaire. Kapag generate sa number, taga Mercury sila tanan, ana. Okay, so you may do stratified sampling, not cluster sampling. Yung cluster sampling kasi most of the time it's geographical. So like isang barangay sila, isang street sila, isang subdivision sila, isang grupo sila.
Yes, ma'am.
Ang coverage sa exam, RRL and this one, methodology. And your paper, I may include questions in the exam asking about your paper, especially your title and the SOP. I might ask that one, ha? I will really know in the exam sino yung sumulat ng paper nyo. Kasi pag may hindi nakasagot doon sa question ko, wala dyan yung gitabang sa papel ninyo ba? Everybody should know what is in your paper. Cluster sampling, it's still dependent on the population. You have to compute first the sample size before doing the cluster sampling. So again, wala magtatanong kung ilan yung dapat respondents ha kasi nagturo na ko sa inyo how to get the sample size last time. It's based on the population. So from the population, you compute the sample size. Okay? Pag alam niyo na yung sample size, you choose what sampling technique are you going to use. And then there, you do it. You select the representative kung ilan man yung generate sa inyo na sample size. Okay? Anything else before time mag-end? It's almost 6:30. Ng mga grupo under sa kuha, kumusta na itong mga papel din ha? I-contact ko ninyo or I might have missed your message ha. Baka hindi ko siya nakita. Puno yung messenger ko ngayon. So if, for example, nag-message kayo, hindi ako nakasagot, i-send ulit yung message para abot siya sa taas. And makita ko siya. Okay?